Hey, friends. If you are listening to this show with little kids in the car, or if you are particularly sensitive to spicy language, then today's podcast might be one that you want to save for another time. I love the fact that the topic of today's conversation is legal and tax law. And that's the one that I need to give you a content warning for, because it's a really interesting conversation. And my guest, Braden Drake, does such a great job of making the boring, the painful, the stressful fun and light and totally manageable. So without further ado, I will cue the intro music and dive straight into my conversation with Braden Drake. Welcome to This Can't Be That Hard. My name is Anami Tonkin, and I help photographers run profitable, sustainable businesses that they love. Each week on the podcast, I cover simple, actionable strategies and systems that photographers at every level of experience can use to earn more money in a more sustainable way. Running a photography business doesn't have to be that hard. You can do it, and I can show you how. Braden Drake, welcome to This Can't Be That Hard. I am so excited to have you on the show. And more than anything, I'm really excited to introduce you to what I'm assuming is most of my audience who probably don't know who you are. So first of all, welcome. I hope you're doing well today.
I am. After some initial hiccups that we've had this morning, it's been really, really good. Tech issues on my part, but I'm very excited to be here. I was going to say I love a captive audience, but I guess that's the nice thing about a podcast is they're not really captive. So hopefully I can hold their attention long enough to stick around with us.
That's right. We have to earn our keep around here. But you have always, in my experience with you, done an amazing job of doing exactly that. So why don't you start out by just kind of introducing yourself? You have such a cool backstory, and I'd love to have everybody hear it.
Sure. So I would try to give the very, very quick synopsis version. I'm originally from Indiana. That's where I grew up. I went to Indiana University, where interestingly, I started out in business, and then I ended up studying Russian and political science. I thought I wanted to be like a diplomat or a jet-setting businessman or something like that. And I ended up going to law school after I dabbled in some other things and wasn't totally sure what I wanted to do, but I somehow ended up getting recommended a tax course based on one of my professors. And that really just stemmed from me not loving to read 80-page court
briefs.
Briefs. Yeah. She's like, you like tax. The laws are short.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, great. So I took a class and I really liked it. And then I ended up getting a master's in tax law. I interned at some big law firms. I really hated that, to be honest. And that all led to me starting my own business. And I had to try to kind of figure out, what is someone that has a little bit of business background, a master's in tax law, and a law degree do? I actually was working at West Elm, the furniture store, when I took the bar exam, and they used to do pop-up shops in there all the time. And it was either a photographer or an artist, I can't remember, told me about Rising Tide Society. This was when RTS was real big. So I went to a meeting, ended up speaking at the next month's meetings. It was a legal topic. And then I ended up speaking all over Southern California. And that's kind of how I got introduced to the creatives niche. So I ended up creating my own business where I do law, tax, and bookkeeping for creative small businesses. And that's how it kind of all came together.
And you could, I don't know exactly how old you are, but when I was in college, I could not have known. There was no such thing as online education. There was not this as an available path. So it's one of the things that I love. And I love that you and I actually first crossed paths when we were learning how to create online education 5+ years ago. And it is one of those things where we can take very specific sort of weird combinations of knowledge and package them up and help other people get what they need. And it's the thing that I think that you do better than basically any other legal mind out there supporting the creative industries, is the way that you are able to break down what are unquestionably complicated, nuanced topics things that we need to know, but we don't necessarily want to know, and make them fun, make them digestible. Like all over your website, you have your like your little gremlins that are, stay away from this guy and don't do this. And it just makes the learning fun. And it's stuff that we really, really need. So again, I was not joking around when I said I'm excited to have you here on the show.
Well, I appreciate it. I do think you should have been, I was going to say in the room, in the Zoom room with my business mastermind when I was talking to them about the rebrand we were going to do with Not Average Law. And I told them, I was like, I'm going to have gremlins. And they were like, what the fuck are you talking about, Braden? And I was like, they're going to be like little characters and we're going to name them. We're going to have Litigious Linda and Mansplain Michael and Uncle Sam. You can like picture it, right?
Sure, yeah.
Because I read StoryBrand and I took it way too literally
Mm-hmm.
because, the client is the hero, we're the guide, and then you have to have an enemy. And I was like, I'm going to bring our enemies to life, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, picture the little Mucinex guy or like those little sticker characters, but they're going to be cute. And they're like,
Right.
Braden, you lost us. But by the time I got done working with my designer, they're like, it's still kind of cheesy, but like we get it now. We're on board.
And I am like, my children will tell you that I am not afraid of cheesy, but the truth of the matter is when it comes to the harder stuff in life, whether it's like running your numbers when you don't want to run your numbers or dealing with taxes, like those kinds of little funny, I mean, they're silly, no question, but they really do drive a point home and make it stick in a way that if you're just trying to read a textbook, like good luck.
Yeah. Yeah. The fun thing for me now is I'll have people make up their own gremlins because I mean, you can really just
of course
make up whatever
take
you
it.
want.
Yep.
Yeah. So one of our clients who's a mutual friend of yours, you mentioned her earlier, she emailed me one time and she's like, Braden, I need some help. I got a copycat Carla on my hands who'd like ripped off all of her stuff. And I was like, I got you. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
Amazing. So good. Okay. So let's get into it. We are here basically to talk about the layers of protection that we need as creatives. Like you went into photography, not because you wanted to deal with legal things or tax things or insurance things, like that was the bottom of the barrel, but you know that you need to do it. And even if you have done that to some degree, there's probably, and I can't come up off the fly with a gremlin name for it, but there's like somebody lurking in the back of your head being like, really? Because you hand wrote, you copied that contract off of some random other photographer and then you just modified it a little bit and you don't really know if it would hold up in court and you don't know if the insurance that you signed up for is really going to cover you. So I'd love for you to just kind of dive in, like whether you're a new business owner or you are somebody who's been in business but you're just not really sure, like how can you set up kind of a checklist, a punch list of like, let's make sure I've got all my ducks in a row.
Yeah, so I like to teach this through this container that I call the layers of protection. And the idea kind of stems from, if anyone's taken a Psycho 101 course, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where we have the pyramid. I think the bottom layer is like food, water, shelter, if I remember correctly.
Right,
and
the
then,
basics, yep.
Yeah, it goes up. So our basics is actually compliance, which is just a fancy legal way of saying don't break the law. So you have to pay your taxes. That's kind of the most obvious compliance thing. You might need to be registering your business. So some cities require you to have a business license. These are our basic compliance tasks. And there are also emerging legal issues we need to keep up with. So independent contractor classification law, whether someone needs to be an employee. We have new rules on testimonials. We have this thing called the click to cancel rule, which is very relevant if you sell memberships. So different things relevant to different types of folks that we work with. The next layer is insurance, and then we have contracts, business entities, and then intellectual property, which is trademark and copyright. So those are kind of our 5 core layers.
Amazing. And is that something that, I mean, I guess compliance, there is certainly like you know what you know and you don't know what you don't know, but most of us probably don't get into the photography space with any designs on like, I'm going to cut these major legal corners. Are there any, at that level, are there any areas where you see direct service providers like photographers, like, is there anything that we should be aware of that we might not be aware of?
Yeah, the big one right now. So there are some of these niche issues, like I mentioned, the testimonial thing. Click to cancel is not really so relevant for you all, but we have Oh boy, one just popped into my head and then I totally lost it. That's okay. I'll
Well,
circle back
while
to
your
it.
brain is circling back to that, talk to me a little bit more about the testimonial law that you're mentioning.
Yeah, so there's a few things. Essentially, like you can't really buy testimonials, which sounds obvious,
Hmm.
but like free gift in exchange for testimonial is where people get in trouble. Also, you can't when you there are rules around when you share testimonials. It's supposed to be representative of the like average work that you provide.
Hmm.
This is pretty easy for photographers because, ideally all your testimonials should be some version of like they were great to work with. The photos are awesome. Love
Right.
the experience. It's a little bit dicier when you're talking about like educators
I
who are
made
giving money.
$50,000 and yeah.
Right. Exactly. You're always going to have like your shining star student, but your
Yep.
testimonials are supposed to encompass everyone. So that we have a lot of little sub issues like that. Oh, the other one I was going to mention was website accessibility. So that
Yeah.
delay tactic did help me figure that
Yeah.
one out. That's an important one, and this isn't something that I'm personally super knowledgeable about. If folks want to go talk to their website designer friends, they can probably tell you more. But don't put like yellow text on neon green backgrounds. All of
Yep.
your clients are creative, so we're probably not like worried about that so much. But fonts need to be readable. One thing I see my design friends rant about a lot is people focus on form over function because they want it to look nice, but it
Right.
needs to be accessible.
Yeah.
The real big one, though, is independent contractor classification rules. So, especially if I work with a lot of wedding people. I know that's not really your niche audience, but
Hmm.
they're using second shooters.
Hmm.
Do portrait photographers have like second photographers, or do they have contractor teams very often?
Not as often when it comes to second photographers, although again, I mean there are certainly wedding photographers listening right now. We do have,
Like
there are
associates, maybe?
associate photographers certainly, and then VAs and things like that. It
Yeah.
depends. Oftentimes photographers are solo shows, but not always.
Gotcha. So to give a real clear example, and these were both wedding photographers, but it could apply really in any circumstance. We've had two different clients, like in the past year and a half, who got audited actually by the state of California for their reasonable salary and their S corporation being too low. That's kind of a whole different topic we're not going to
Hmm.
talk about today, but it
Yep.
is one that I speak about and write about in my book. You have to pay yourself a reasonable salary. So they got audited because the salary was too low. And then during that, once you get audited, they can look at whatever they want.
They open it all up. Yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of the whole point. And they looked and they were like, all right, well, who have you 1099'd? And then, okay, should these people have been 1099s? And here in California, we use something called the ABC test. Some people know about this, most people don't. But it surprises a lot of people to learn that this is actually the test used in about 30 of our 50 states. So in more than half of them. And Part B says that someone can't be a contractor if they provide services within the usual course of the hiring entity's business. So photography is certainly within the usual course. And then Part C says that in order to be a contractor, they have to have their own business doing the thing that you've essentially hired them for. So hiring a photographer as a photographer certainly fails that rule. Of course, we have all these different exceptions to the rule, but that's just the baseline guidance. So I know we have a lot of other stuff to talk about, so we don't
Yeah.
need to get in the weeds, but people just need to be aware of this law and go look into it, really.
Yeah. That one definitely rings some bells in my own head. So so
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
won't go too deep on that, but yeah.
We have a very, very juicy blog post on this on our website, so I can give you
Oh,
the link if you want to share
yeah,
it.
for sure. I will. And I will read it. Okay, so that's compliance. Then we get into, you said contracts was number 2. Oh, hi.
Yes.
We've got, if you're
Insurance and then contracts.
excellent. Oh, insurance is next. Sorry, we just had our furry friends join us.
Yeah, this is everyone that's listening. My dog Sammy, she's 18 years old. She's
Oh my
deaf and
God.
blind. And I had to pick her
Sweet
up because she
baby.
kept actually running headfirst into my chair. So
Oh, sweet girl. All right. So then let's dive in on insurance.
yeah, so insurance, just to cover that very broadly, I'm not an insurance agent, so I just always send people to an insurance agent. But generally, it's important to think about all the things that you need to be insured for. So property insurance is important for your audience because
Yep.
you have equipment that you need to insure. Also, general liability. So that's typically going to cover you for any kind of personal injury type of stuff and some other things. And then professional liability, I believe, is what you would need if you had, and these are always like your worst case scenario issues. If you like your all your stuff got stolen and you like lost all your client photos, that kind of thing. And then
Right.
there's, emerging issues like cyber insurance. But the most important thing is just to find an insurance agent that really understands your business. They should ask you all of the probing questions they need to ask you to determine your liability. And then they're going to tell you what insurance you need. Keep in mind that they are, in some degrees, like the rest of us, salespeople. So they
Sure.
might try to over insure you, but you should be able to ask thoughtful questions to figure out how much insurance you want and what you need.
Yeah. Yeah. And insurance in the 15-year span of my photography business has definitely come in real handy a few times, especially when it comes to equipment.
Oh,
So it's
good.
not something to neglect for sure. Okay, and then we get into the part that I think is probably the biggest area of need in my audience, which is contracts.
Yes, yes. So contracts are very key. I think, especially anyone that was in business in 2020, I hopefully don't need to tell you about the importance of
Yeah.
contracts. Most people understood it before then, but that really was an awakening moment for a lot of us on just how they're going to operate and practice. But the main thing, I mean, we can talk about what needs to go in the client contract, but then also important to note that that's not the only contract you typically need, right? You
Hmm.
also need a privacy policy for your website. Sometimes we need web terms. If you are hiring contractors, you need a contractor agreement. If you ever have a client that wants to cancel services, you should send them a cancellation contract. There's all sorts of contracts and documents that are really good for us to have in our back pocket and to be utilizing in our business.
Yeah, and just off the top of my head, I mean, there are other things like if you're ever invited to speak at a conference, you're probably going to be signing a contract. And if they don't give you a contract, you may want to send them a contract. And,
Right.
there are all kinds of different things. And this is the piece that I really feel like when I'm talking to photographers and I ask about contracts, they'll say, "Oh yeah, I have a contract." And I'm like, "Great. You told me you do family photos, newborn photos, you do some in home, you do some in studio, you're working with, there's like a whole handful of things and they're using one contract period." And I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm not sure that's going to dot all the i's and cross all the t's.
Yeah, that's like seven contracts right there, right? Just had this conversation with the owner of my gym the other day. So I go to a CrossFit and weightlifting gym. So it's very different than like a large commercial gym because,
Right.
we have like 100 members, but we all know each other and we do like events all the time. And I'm friends with the owner. And she wanted me to review the contracts. And we have, different payment plans. And there's like 24-hour versus the general contract. And I was like, well, these all need to be different contracts. And she's like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, well, you have the way it read was like, if you are this kind of member, then, but if you're this kind of member, then, and I'm like, no, you need to cut all these irrelevant paragraphs for the
Right.
particular person who's reading it. And she's like, well, that sounds like a huge pain in the ass. And I said, not really. You want to create your main contract for like your number one service, and then you duplicate it, and you're going to change like 2 to 3 paragraphs. And then you're going to have different versions. And then when you're sending it to your client, it's going to take you like an hour or two more work on the front end. But then when you go to send these to your clients, you have all the templates that are very specific to that service in your back pocket. And it makes it way easier and more relevant and more enforceable down the road.
Yeah. And this is the sort of thing where if you don't currently have this and you hear, okay, you need to go get you need to go get 6 more contracts in your business, most people are like weighing, well, what are the chances that I'm going to end up in court or somebody's going to send me like a strongly worded letter
Mm-hmm.
versus how much is this going to cost me to go out and have this done? And I mean, that's a real thing because obviously every time that I even call and have a 15-minute phone call with my lawyer, I am writing a check that is, at least into the 3 figures for that short period of time. So,
Well, let's see, 15 minutes this is the way they bill it. That's one
yep,
fourth of an hour. So if
yep.
your hourly rate is $400, that's
That's
a hundred
$100.
bucks.
Yeah. So it gets eaten up really fast. So when I am talking to photographers, I feel like, that is that's kind of the math that they're working on. And it's really why I love the contract club of yours, which I only found, I don't know, 6 months ago, because I actually needed a couple of additional contracts in my own business. And that mutual friend that you and I were talking about before mentioned your name to me. And I was like, oh, yeah, I knew him back in the day. And so I dove in, and it was like, this is a godsend. Like, I have a big contract that I paid somebody a lot of money to put together. But then, if I need to take this piece out and add a different piece in, I don't really want to go spend $700 to have that one paragraph drafted and fixed up. And even if the contract club was just sort of the way that you got to the point that you then went and had your local lawyer look at it and double check everything, it was like save so much money just right off the bat. So I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about how that product came to be and kind of who's using it most.
Yeah, well, first of all, my question, what contracts did you need that you joined the contract club to get? Do you
Oh,
remember?
what was it? I think it was when I was updating my membership contract stuff.
Okay, gotcha. Your membership
Yeah.
terms. Nice.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, to give a little bit of a rundown, this is like such a meandering journey, but I'll give you all the short version. We met in Amy Porterfield's course, Digital Course Academy, in 2019. And through that program, I ended up creating my signature program that I still run called Unfuck Your Biz. So missed the swear warning for you all, but there it is. I'll probably say it a couple more times. So UIB, we call it for short. And as one of the kind of like bonus programs, I created a separate program called UIC. You can figure out what that one is. So contracts related, right? And then I tried for a while. So before that, I actually was doing like the template shop thing and trying to sell contracts template by template. I kind of hated it. There was a lot of competition for that. And then you're managing essentially a Shopify-esque kind of business with all these different templates. It's like a lot of rigmarole on the back end. So I put them all inside of UIC, and it was just a bonus for a while. And then I tried to sell it as a course. Newsflash, no one wants to take a course on contracts.
Right.
But really, I was selling the same thing that I'm selling now. It was just a messaging shift. So this is an important note for really your audience and for everyone just on marketing. Sometimes it really does matter what we call things.
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
totally.
So then I got this wild idea. Were you familiar with Boss Project?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so this is my friends Abby and Emily. And now Abigail runs it. But they have this course called Trello for Business that was $30. And they talked about how it basically just sold like wildfire. And that's where they got all their leads from. They'd sold like a couple thousand of them. And I was like, you know what? I want that. But for a long time, I didn't know what that thing would be.
Right.
And then I was like, you know what? I'm sitting on all these contracts. Why don't I just like make it $30? And then I launched it in January 2022. We sold 200 that first month. And for me, that was like a ton because my email list was not that big at the time. Mm-hmm. And I called it the Contract Vault at first. It now is called the Contract Club. And then it just kind of spiraled from there. We have affiliates now. I have Contract Club trademarked, and we've since raised the price. It's $200 now, but it really became a really good lead gen for us. But also, I always say one of my missions is to rid the creative space of terrible contracts. So it's working in that respect because finally people at least have a lower cost alternative to getting really terrible free shit on the internet.
Exactly. And that really is the difference because there are plenty of contract templates floating around out there. What I love about the Contract Club, and I kind of bought it because I was like, I need this one thing. And then as I started to go through kind of point by point, like, oh, then you need this and then you need this, I was like, ooh, perfect. But they were all there. Like I didn't have to buy anything more. Yeah. And, you could charge 10 times what you're currently charging and it would still be a massive savings compared to, even like a couple hours of a lawyer's time. So it is amazing to me. Here you are, you're like a lawyer and a tax professional, and you've got all this stuff put together. It's like, I just want to shout it from the rooftops because I feel like if money is the thing holding you back, and honestly, if like the boredom factor is the thing holding you back, Braden's got you covered.
Yeah, we got you covered for sure. We call it like the membership with no monthly fee because
Yeah.
you join,
It's just a
like you
one
pay
time.
once, and
Yeah.
then we have a circle community. I actually, it was funny, while you were talking, you may have seen me get my notebook out because I was like, oh, I should mention the circle community. And then I thought, oh, I need to go in there and respond to people's questions today because I haven't done that in a couple days. So I put it on my to-do list, but
Yeah.
you can post questions in there. And then we also have a contract request feature. So we add 3 new contracts every month. And at this point, like we've been running it so
There's
long
so
that
many.
and the new contracts we add are getting like super niche.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like we just, I think last month added one for people who make tabletop game figurines. So people who, because that's
Yeah,
a big
that's
thing, I
niche.
guess, like Dungeons and Dragons or whatever, they make they make them, and then it's like people hand carve them from wood. I don't know how they do it, but they make them and
Wow.
sell them. That's like a whole separate side business. And some months we'll have a slow month and we don't get very many requests because we always say we prioritize members first and then contracts we think will be most relevant to our general audience.
Sure.
And then we kind of trickle down from there. And we didn't have that many requests that month. So we made that one. But every once in a while, we'll get a request for something I'm super surprised we don't have. So my friend Kira is I'm saying it like a party. She's hosting her first in-person event. And I was kind of surprised we didn't already have a template for that. So we wrote that for her and added it last month as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I didn't actually mean for this to turn into a massive advertisement for the contract club, but
It kind of went, yeah.
I know I went there, but it was me. I dragged it there because I am a believer. So let's quickly move through those top 2 layers of protection because I think those are a little less perhaps relevant to everyone, but they're good to be aware of in case they are.
Yes. Well, the next layer is business entities. So that's where we talk about LLCs. And I've done like entire podcasts on just the topic of LLCs. Sure. So we could really get into it, but that is your basics. I always tell people like to think about your business entities like Pokemon evolution. If people are familiar, I always think of Charmander, Charmeleon, and Charizard because Charmander's the cutest. And he's your sole prop, right? So basically you start as a sole prop, you can evolve into an LLC, which gives you liability protection, which is a really great thing to do. And then once you're profiting enough money, you can evolve into your final form for most people, which ends up being an S corporation. And you do that for the tax benefits. Mm-hmm. So that's the very basics of our business entity conversation.
And that, just to jump in, I guess I shouldn't have said that's not relevant. It's just usually a more stable thing. You don't kind of jump back and forth between like this year I'm a sole prop and next year I'm an S corp. And
right.
So that would be something that you would want to talk to your tax professional about and sort of think about, am I making enough money to justify moving up or,
Yeah, I mean, it can. So this is where people get a little stuck on this one because it can be a tax professional thing, but it's also a legal thing, right? Mm-hmm. Because LLCs are actually a legal liability issue. The point of them is to protect your personal assets from any kind of business liability. So I like to give the example of like, imagine you're Bill Gates and you want to start a base jumping company, right? Like imagine you're built. So what's going on in this scenario? Okay, we have a ton of money, we have a ton of assets, and we're starting a very, very high risk business. Like, does he want to be a sole prop out of the gate, even if he doesn't plan on making any money, right? So the profit and the money is kind of irrelevant to the question of whether he wants to have an LLC.
Yep.
So that's a very extreme example, but in a lot of states, LLCs are super cheap to form, mm-hmm. and they're actually a real big pain in the ass to do down the road because once you get an LLC, you have to open a new bank account and all your business licenses have to change. So most of the time, I recommend people do it before they even launch their business, just out of ease. But yeah, you can do that. And then the S Corp question is more of a tax question for your tax professional once you get rolling.
Great. Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, no problem.
And then at the very tippy top, we've got trademark, copyright.
Yeah. So intellectual property. And I honestly kind of threw that one at the top because that's the one that really is going to be like case specific. So if you have like a pretty generic business name that you don't really care about and it's just a placeholder that we're not super worried about trademarks, if you have something that's like very unique that you really love, you don't want someone to take, or if you have something like we'll use my contract club as an example. It's people like Googling it, people know the name. Some people, it's gotten to the point now where some people know the contract club, but they don't know me, which is kind of a nice place to be in.
Sure.
That's where a trademark can become really valuable.
Yeah.
And obviously, if your goal is to get your business to that point or something that you offer or your business name, then we want to look into that for sure.
Love that. And remind me when you end up getting a trademark, is it 5 years in the US?
For the renewal?
Yeah.
Yeah. 5 years.
Okay.
I believe it's 5 years.
Yeah.
I'll have to double check that. We started filing trademarks like a year and a half ago. So I'm like,
so you're not there yet.
I was like, yeah. So in 1 or 2 years, we're going to have to get a really good system down
You'll
for the
know
renewals
all
for all
about
these
it.
clients.
Good.
Yeah, filed, I think we've had like 25 approved so far for our clients, which
good.
Considering it takes like a year to like 15 months, it's like, oof.
Yeah, I got a few a couple of years ago and it was kind of a big deal, but it is nice to have them. Like it feels like, okay, I've got my bases covered there.
Yes, for sure.
Amazing. So much good information in this. And I hope that if you are listening and I hope you feel one way or the other, either like, great, I am well covered where I am, or motivated and have some sense of like, here are the next steps that I need to take. Because guys, this stuff is super important. I know it's boring. People like Braden make it less boring, but it is not boring if you end up on the other side of an audit or a lawsuit and you don't have those things taken care of. That gets unboring in the wrong way.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, so good. Well, anyway, this was lovely. I cannot wait to chat again sometime soon and let everybody know, other than the Contract Club, where they can find you.
Yeah, so our business is Not Average Law, AVG for short. So Not AVG Law. You can find us at Not AVG Law on Instagram and Threads. That's where I tend to be most active. And then notavglaw.com. If you're interested in learning more about all the things, I usually recommend that people start with my book, Unfuck Your Biz, where I share all these analogies and case studies and stories in there. But you can get a lot of free blog posts, great content on the website as well.
Now, do you have an audio version of your book yet?
I do. Yeah. And my book is not sold on Amazon and it's not on Audible. You have to go to my website. Someone told me that there's a copy on Amazon for like $300. I don't know what that's about. I have no idea. We order it like directly from the printer and we ship them to everyone who buys them from our website because it's pretty low volume. So unfuckyourbizbook.com will redirect you to the sales page.
Good. I'm going to get your audiobook. I listen to all of my books these days, but
nice.
But yeah.
It's the audiobook is in private podcast form. If people are familiar with that. Yeah.
Love that. So good. All right. Well, have a great day, Braden.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That's it for this week's episode of This Can't Be That Hard. I'll be back same time, same place next week. If you like the show, be sure to check out thiscan'tbethathard.com to explore all the resources we have for photographers. And of course, it would mean the world to me if you would leave a review of the show on iTunes or Spotify. As always, thanks so much for joining me. I hope you have a fantastic week.